Hi, welcome, James Brady. Thank you so much for joining us. This is our second interview with Moringa growers and entrepreneurs in California. And it's really an honor and privilege to have you here. We've known each other for a long time and have worked with Moringa through health and nutrition and cultivation programs. So it's great to have you here. You're really a mentor of mine. And yeah, it's a pleasure to be interviewing you. And you can introduce yourself and tell us about you and your work. And then we can also just kind of go through these interview questions as well. So.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me, Dr. Waterman. James Brady, a founder of Con10u2farm. It's a social enterprise. I didn't create it to make money. It was more about social responsibility and helping others to understand how they can manage their health through growing organic food in several different ways, whether it's aeroponics, hydroponics, aquaponics, vermoponics. And part of my venture into growing food in small spaces has kind of like been my niche for the last 10 years or so. I'm a veteran and also a member of the Veterans Farmers Coalition in Davis, California, where I were able to connect with veterans all over the country. And on one of my journeys, I ventured into Detroit. And this was about 7 years ago, where I met a gentleman from Ghana. And I asked him a question, have you heard of Moringa? Next thing I know, I had a 2-hour lecture, and from that moment, by the time I returned home, I'd say within 5 days, I probably had about 60, 70 pounds sitting on my doorstep, wow, all packaged and jarred up and ready to distribute around the world. So that really piqued my interest initially, and then locally, when I was living there in Sacramento, one of my clients was Miss Effie Gant, and Miss Gant introduced it to me locally, and she told me about this individual that had a hoop house and growing small plants. And from there, I just continued to research and get more involved with it. And as a result, I think it was probably about a year later where I ran into you. This is like 7, probably 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Right about then. And of course, I learned so much from you, just on the periphery of my knowledge expanding. It was a great relationship. And, I was working with the nutrition department at UC Davis at the time on creating gardens and writing a bunch of grants to improve the nutrition level of particularly our young people in elementary and high school. So from there, I got this wild idea that I should design some gardens to put in some of these schools, which I did. And so we have like 18 different gardens scattered throughout Sacramento school district that are still up and running today. So I was very proud to be able to do that. And I had a relationship with the Sacramento Health Department, who funded a lot of these gardens. So it was quite the journey until I left 3 years ago. And I now live in Palm Springs area in Indio, California, where my knowledge has expanded even more. Going out and working on a fish farm for the last couple of years. And that's been really, really exciting because there was 10 acres of moringa there. And well, we can get into that later about, various ways we can use it. But yeah, that's just some of my background. And I also sell moringa powder, the t-shirts, the leaves, toothpaste. Part of this is doing business amongst each other. And so I'm working with Kristen Brown, who you had on last week. And we're just trading commerce, just trying to establish a new way to develop this business in California and hopefully saturate the market.
Mhm. One thing I wanted to ask was, since I am still in Sacramento, it'd be great to try and go visit some of the schools where you still have those programs going. I do remember going to visit one school, and it was really impressive. And it's something that should be at every school, really. And it's more of like a novelty that some of these schools have a garden and some have access, but I think that needs to be more prevalent. And it's great when people can at least set those up, and then they can be a model for other people to say, hey, if I want to get into this now, I can model it after Con10u2farm's model here at this school, right?
Yes.
And so I think that's a lot of what we're doing too, not just trading commerce, but like trading projects and using models like the garden at the Communicare Center or Makeda Dread's World Beat Center, right? Like these all stand as tools then that we can use. So that's been really great. And as I told you before, as much as I know you're happy down there, I do miss having you here in the capital, in the city with this, as my efforts are also trying to connect more of the community and the city of Sacramento with the University of California. And I think you continue to do such a great job in bringing people together from various backgrounds and expertise, and bringing things to fruition, like actual reports, documents, actual vegetables, these types of things. So it's interesting too that Christian mentioned where he first heard about Moringa was from an Ethiopian gentleman, so in Oakland. And so it's also interesting to see this. And my first experience with the plant was in West Africa as well. So while it's native to India, it's interesting to see that most people from so far who we're talking with, they're getting this information much from the African continent as well. And that's important to point out, that how much history this plant has, once it was naturalized into these other areas and communities, and a part of people's diets and stuff. So it's great to see. I think, could you talk a little bit about the different either your cultivation of Moringa or different styles of cultivation that you've seen and maybe would recommend, or how do you grow Moringa if you're growing Moringa? And then also, how do you consume it yourself, or can talk about kind of cultivation and consumption?
Yeah, so there are a lot of ways. I'll start with the consumption piece first, because that's the first thing I do in the morning is I pop 2 seeds, shoot 2 seeds every day. And I've gotten this from various farmers that I've worked with or been exposed to, like Kyrene down in Fresno. She was telling me about, she had a vision problem and she eats like 4 or 5 seeds before she goes to bed at night. And all of a sudden her vision now is 20/20. And I was like,
Wow.
well, this journey of Moringa is really, you can't explain or describe what it is, because it's, I think once the ingredients are in your body, then it starts to propel you and think different, right? But it always brings you right back to the source. So I always say that olive vera is the diva of all of the 13 species. And I just love the way that all of my mentors, all the people describe it and their experiences with it over the years, really impressive on other people that are not familiar with it to use it on a daily basis, as well as to encourage them to grow a plant in their backyard. It doesn't matter where you live. If you're in a house, a condo, apartment, you can still grow a little small tree for yourself and have your own little pharmacy there. Now, in terms of growing and cultivation, I was invited to a international conference on Moringa, a boon to mankind, a couple of years ago out of India. And of course, that blew my mind. I didn't know anybody knew me or how they found me, and I still don't know how they found me.
The power
But
of the internet
yeah, the internet,
and your reputation.
it was amazing. So I participated and we did a little pre-screening of my presentation prior to me going live with them. But, you know, I was impressed because the first day, I spoke on the third day, but on the first day, there were 400 people from all, 420 to be exact, every day from all over India. And everybody's talking about Moringa, right? So and it was almost like six hours a day. So I got broad-based education that I could never get out of the university. I mean, it was just fabulous. And all the participants, we had producers, we had growers, we had distributors, processors. And of course, the university had developed about 25 different papers on Moringa, the PKM1 seed and the 2, which they had modified. And then, you know, I learned a little bit about Stenopatella outside of Olifera. So this was really, really an eye-opener. And so on the third day, when I did do my presentation, I talked a little bit about aquaponics and vertical integration into this picture. And it was well received to a degree whereby they came back 2 months later and said, oh, we just learned something new. We're going to try, see if we can start growing Moringa hydroponically. Because at this point, you know, all I heard was leaf production, leaf production, leaf production. So aquaponically and hydroponically, not only can you increase leaf production in likely 30 to 45 days, you can have little trees growing that are, you know, 3-4 feet tall, just in that short amount of time, using the right nutrients, of course. So we did a little experiment out on the farm and come to find out, wow, this stuff really works. So we didn't go through a trial 6 months. It was only like, well, I'd say 2 months after we put the bio columns in. These are something that Derek Chapman had invented. And we took the fish wastewater out of one of the ponds, cleaned it up, and floated through the bio columns. And we had all the media in a sock. And we were able to grow these trees. It was just fascinating to see how quick they grew and the leaves that they produced. So I thought to myself, wow, this is really innovative in a sense that, you know, we're struggling with people planting Moringa on large acreage. Well, we can escalate this now to a degree where we could do really high density and bio columns or hydroponically, aquaponically, and increase leaf production as well as start a nursery business if that person wanted to do that. So I think.
Can I ask a question? Because I mean, see, even so, for the record, then you can grow Moringa aquaponically or in a hydroponic system.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
And then the next question is, because I don't know much about that, Moringa does have this, you know, big taproot, like a carrot. So I think then you just have to make sure you have a system that completely drains and dries out. Is that correct?
Yeah, so one of the things, the innovative piece of this is that, yes, you're right, Moringa had this long taproot. So as a result of that, it was easy to miss the roots of the plants through the system, right? Aquaponically or hydroponically. And all of that beneficial bacteria gets uptaken by the roots, right? And as a result of that, you got this exponential growth that's taking shape up top. And of course, a lot of that depends on good photosynthesis, you know, all of the things that any other plant would need to grow vigorously. But the breakthrough was, yes, it does work. And that taproot was actually one of the biggest contributors to the success of those plants growing that fast in the aquaponic system. Now, in the hydroponic system, it's a little bit different because you don't have with a taproot and you're using like a gutter system. What you're probably going to end up with is a lot of clogging in your system, right? Because of the length of those tap roots, but you can start it from seed and grow it out to say 1 or 2 feet, and then remove it and pot it, if you will, and keep it growing in a different. You could either put it in soil or put it in cocoa fiber or something
I
like
see what
that.
you're saying. Yeah, so use it as like a starting spot too. Do you know if I'm forgetting his name at 151 Farms, are they growing moringa there as well, or
Yes,
Daryl Cotton?
Daryl Cotton. Yes, Daryl has been growing moringa. In fact, I was down last year, and he had one of his trees growing aquaponically. So, you know, what I described to you is that we got a recirculating water system and a sock. But the way Daryl does it, he uses lava rock, right? So, and he has a dual zone within his aquaponic system. So there's no soil involved. It's all lava rock because the rocks will hold the nutrients in place so that all of that beneficial bacteria gets uptaken by the roots of the plants. But yeah, he grows a variety of trees using that method. And so I think it was a breakthrough. And if anyone wants to venture into that, I think they would tinker with it a little bit, but you certainly would get the desired results you're looking for. In particular, if you're just looking for leaf production, right? And the younger the plant, it's just my belief, like most plants, the younger they are, the more nutritious those leaves are, because of the richness of the beneficial bacteria that's uptaken by the roots.
Yeah, and I can like attest to that too in terms of the phytochemistry. Like even people say for nutritional content, you don't really want to harvest after 35 days, like the leaf itself being more than 35 days old, because it just will start to shift over to more fiber and less nutrition. And then the other thing, when they're young, they're like, they will have more of the isothiocyanates as well. Younger leaves tend to have more, which makes sense because it's coming from the seed, which has a higher concentration for protection and defense. So when you get the sprouts, that's why even like broccoli sprouts and all this stuff are so rich in these compounds, because it's the young that are the most vulnerable and then the most, you know, armed with this artillery of chemical defense.
Yes.
And so, yeah, they are. And that's what's so neat about Moringa is that you can just have this little, I mean, I just have a nice little bonsai one and keep taking it off as like little sprouts as a garnish. And I would say that, you know, kind of if you haven't experienced the taste of fresh moringa, it is worth that experience compared to the dried powder. And then the seeds as well definitely have a different a different flavor as well. So yeah, it's great. I hope that your, you know, your business can expand and more people can taste and try it. You said you also drink it a lot as a tea, right? Or
yeah, I forgot to mention before I get to the teas that, oh, if you're looking for pods and flowers and seed hydroponically, aquaponically, you wouldn't want to continue to grow because we haven't experimented enough to have them in the system to say, you know, the second year you're going to get pods and flowers. So this is just basically
leaf
for
production.
leaf production.
Yeah, no, that's good to clarify. Yeah, that those systems would be, or for like a prep, right? And to seedlings that would then go into the dirt. Yeah, because yeah, at some point you have to make a decision whether you want to grow this plant as a vegetable or as a tree, right? And
Yes.
then
yeah, but in terms of consuming it in a different way outside of the seeds, I have my special tea blend with turmeric, moringa, hibiscus, fresh ginger, and of course green tea. And I blend that and brew it in a coffee pot. I mix it with a gallon of Simply lemonade, and that's my energy drink because I'm not a big water drinker. After I've seen what happens with water and how it's processed and resold back to the public, I just kind of soured my taste a little bit. Now I do drink it, don't get me wrong, but I drink more of my own blend, my tea, than I do water. It seems to be working pretty good for me. So. Yeah.
I say so. If we can all be as active and healthy at your age, we'll be doing well. So,
Yes.
and that's kind of a tricky, as a scientist, it's interesting because, you mentioned Kaying's vision getting better, and there are these really amazing anecdotal stories of people's experience with Moringa on their health. But that is also comes with a bit of danger in this miracle plant that can cure and treat, hundreds of diseases. And so, I have to ride that fine line of paying attention to anecdotal stories, right? Because people don't continue to take things if they don't work generally, and so there is something to that. And there is this history. So it's always kind of finding this balance. But I guess my recommendation is that there is evidence, both scientifically and anecdotally, historically, and that everybody should try and kind of have their own experience with this plant. I don't really feel a lot of effects of it, but I do still take it here and there. And I also feel like if I need to have more consistency with it, maybe to have some of those effects,
Yeah. Well, I tell you the most noticed thing that I've noticed over the last couple of years is I actually were doing more than 2 seeds, and my energy level was so high to a degree. Sometimes when I got up really fast from sitting, I would have to just stand there for a second because I would get a little bit jaded, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And that just let me know that these seeds are very powerful. So I cut back to 2, and I haven't had that issue since. It's just, but throughout the day, my energy is at the same level. I feel just like I did 40, 50 years ago, really, tell you the truth. I have no problems at all. I'm very grateful for that, but I do attribute a lot of it to consuming Moringa, because I also, I was going to mention, I put it on a salad. I don't have a salt shaker. I have a Moringa shaker, and I put it on cereal in the morning if I'm eating cereal. If I'm having applesauce or oatmeal, I just mix it in pretty much with everything. And I find it to just be, it entices the flavor of whatever it is that you're eating, but it's also good for you. So can't go wrong, right?
Can't go wrong with that. No, that sounds great. And then what are there things that you want to know more about with Moringa that you have curiosity about, or resources, or anywhere from the plant itself to kind of the industry or your business? What would you ask for if you could from the diva?
Well, I do have some other interests, and I do thank Cooley for getting in touch with me about trying to assist them in getting rid of some powder that they weren't what's suitable for their products. And so rather than me trying to sell it to someone, I thought, well, I got a few contacts at the university in Alabama and Tuskegee. So I made a call, and they said, sure, let's give it a try. Now, unfortunately, Alabama State, they did not get the study completed with using Moringa as a biofertilizer and a formula spray. But we already know that it's very, very much accepted practice that you can use it as a biofertilizer and as a formula spray. But I was looking to see if I could get them to one of the grad students to just write up a concept paper. But Tuskegee, we presently have 2 studies going on at Tuskegee, one of which I do have the paper, and I need to share that with you.
Okay, great.
Gary, from we shipped down, I believe, about 200 pounds last year, and they were going to test it out on goats to see if it could be used as a fodder for goats. And I got that report back, and it did work with the goats. There was not a lot of detail in that report. However, it was enough to convince me based on what I had seen previously that it does work. Now, the one that we currently have is we shipped a ton of the same powder down to, because I had it lab tested it as well as they did. Even though the powder had turned brown, it still had 27% protein. So I'm like, okay, I think that's a good solution for livestock. So
Yeah.
Professor Nar Garoon at Tuskegee asked me, could I arrange to have a ton shipped down, which we did last year. And currently the study is ongoing to use it as a fodder for livestock. And so I would like to see that expanded, not only into the aquaculture world of feeding it, pelletizing it, and feeding the fish, because you know, on the aquaculture side, you can blend duckweed, spirulina, and moringa together, pelletize it, feed it to the fish for a healthier fish, right? So it has all of these implications. And so, you know, in terms of what I would like to see more of is more studies done around how it could be used to reduce some of the costs that farmers are facing with feeding their livestock. And moringa, I think, as well as some of the other plants out there, could address that problem right now, particularly when we're dealing with climate change and growing duckweed and moringa. You got carbon sequestration, and you have duckweed is probably one of the most nutritious things that you can feed to a fish. So there are all of these other things out there that I'm just slowly creeping into. Seed oil extraction for another example. I don't know enough about that, but I'm getting there, and I just think it's just pretty exciting.
It is. It's very exciting, sometimes so much that it's kind of like that feeling when you take a couple seeds, there's a lot going on and a lot of directions to go in. And just to kind of, you know, for everyone else's knowledge, we've mainly been, you know, I think for both of us kind of went into this focusing on nutrition and health. But when you start to see these plants and see the complexity of a food system and value chains, and, you know, I think what's so interesting about this story with Tuskegee and Cooley is that we always talk about commercializing things and how great it is to see them on the market, but you often forget that, you know, the powder, Cooley's powder, is meeting high organic standards, all of these things, all of these regulations. So it does make sense that in that chain, you're going to have kind of a B grade product that didn't get sold in time. It expired, it went bad, it got contaminated, it got oxidized, whatever the case. That shouldn't be a waste product. Same thing in the cannabis industry, same thing in every industry, right? Waste is still, so now you're saying it became trash or waste, and now it's actually a very high value ingredient for animal feed, and that you could actually cut costs within that industry. So it starts to really compound the benefit, the financial benefits, you know? And I think that I do also want to share with you an article that someone just sent me regarding, you know, Biden's current plan and trying to look at, they've had these, you know, carbon limits and stuff like this, but they haven't looked too much into agriculture. And so, and livestock. And there are a couple studies showing less methane emissions from even cows that consume moringa. So, certainly, I think like one of the projects we should work on is having, you know, a really nice review paper, at least on all of these different subjects. There's certainly been a lot written on nutrition and health. And, you know, we're working on writing one for the biofertilizer aspect. But I think another up-to-date one would be good for animal feed as well. There's quite a bit on tilapia and fish feed actually with moringa, but you know, everything you're saying is just like so exciting to me, because you could really it would also be really neat to say, you know, at all of these stops along the value chain, this is how much you're saving, because your source is on site, right, as well, or it could be then if your farm is there. And then you have a no waste circular system as well. So what about, like, with that, and where do you see things going? You know, you've been in this now, what, 10, 15 years maybe, and where do you see it going in the next 5 years in terms of California and kind of the global industry?
Well, on the global side of things, I think there's this battle going on between the two countries in the continent of Africa. You know, because I think a large part of the GDP of India is Moringa, right? Africa is growing in usage and consumption of it. And I think they see it based on what I'm hearing and talking to various people is the saturation of Moringa to establish a whole new economy there in Africa to maybe control some of the import exports of. Of course, it has to be of high quality. The standards have to be there. So on an international stage, we have to have those quality standards in place. And maybe Africa may be struggling with some of that. I'm not sure, but I do think that based upon Cooley's model with the African women farmers, they do have some quality standards in place now. So all of that just needs to be bumped up about 5 or 6 notches. And over the next 5 years or so, I think that the market is growing exponentially here, particularly in California and all over the country. I mean, I talk to people in North Carolina, I got some farmers in Indiana and Alabama. In fact, I just convinced a friend of mine that has a large community garden, an urban garden in Dothan, Alabama, to do a high density row crop. And I sent some seeds down. So he has 2 trees that were growing really well. And I said, well, maybe you should venture into high density and sell it as a garnish to restaurants, because he's in the stores already, has good relationships. He's on the city council. So, and I think that's going to work. And then we have Nebadiah Farms over in North Carolina, who's ready to put 4 acres in production. He's actually selling Moringa now from a local buyer, and sent me a letter where some company wanted to pay him $200,000 a year. Just wanted to get everything that he's growing into their marketplace. So I think with efforts like that, you know, from Carolina up to Indiana, and the fact that we can grow Moringa, you know, aquaponically, you do it in shipping containers. There's a market for selling as a garnish. There's a market for seed extraction, you know, for oils, for shampoos, for toothpaste and cosmetics. I mean, it's already there. We just need to expand it some. But you know, the numbers that I looked at for consumption in Europe is like crazy. And I say that in a good way, because for a farmer, that they really rely on that revenue stream. So the more people that are consuming it, the better. But here in California, I think, you know, we got 2 or 3 things going on. We got climate change. We've got a lot of land, that arable land that was in production is out of production now because of water shortage. So we have to shift our focus into thinking more about carbon sequestration and nutrition. So it seems to me that the health department and the farmers need to get together and come up with a new strategy to embrace such a change like, you know, the Moringa presents, because you can use it as I said, as a biofertilizer. We could grow it for biomass. I've seen paper made from Moringa in the last 3 years. So I just think that once the state embrace it in a way that, and part of what you're doing is certainly vital, so essential to the saturation and the growing of moringa and the usage of it, consumption here in the state of California. So that really excited me. And then, of course, we got the great Mariko Griffin down in San Diego, who I had the pleasure of, and thanks to you, we are now a Moringa ambassador.
Yay!
It's just been amazing. So, you know, from the mentors, the teachers, and the relationships, it just seems to be just growing in popularity. I forgot about to mention my friend in Mississippi who wants to grow it. So, you know, the culture shift, in particular when we're dealing with diabetes and obesity in the Southern Hemisphere, pretty much, it is something that I've personally been trying to change myself. And my brother is doing his thing in Alabama, growing trees, selling them to various people. We just had an event this weekend at the George Washington Carver Museum where he had grown about 100 trees. So we're now selling the trees for people that come to visit the museum and to help her raise some money and to create more awareness in that part of Alabama around moringa and consumption of it. So there's all of these little things that I call the Moringa Tank plan, if you will. Turning all nations green.
Yep.
That's the tang of it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you've got these t-shirts. So thank you for sending this. Do you want to, here, I'm trying to get it in the camera. I'm like, how can I do this? Wait, I'm
Yeah, you're like me, huh?
It's so backwards. There you go.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about the artist and about, actually, I should show the back, or can you show the back of your shirt too? Because it is really nice. We can show
Yeah, I have it hanging up here on this picture.
Oh, I see. Yeah, you can bring it
it's
over.
Moringa Tank, Olifera, everybody. And what I mean by that is turning all nations green with Olifera, but everybody is really everybody. That is the cattle, the chickens, the goats, the fish, everybody in the world. And of course, humans come first. And so you see around the globe there is I have all people of color. And so we all have to join hands around the world to create this unstoppable movement of Moringa. And Olifera, the diva, she's taken charge. And so my logo was designed by world famous artist Joseph Samuels out of Atlanta. He designed this for me about, 4 years ago? And I just never used it until now. And the diva just emerged and says, you need to put that on a tee. So prominent world-class African-American artist, Joe Samuels, I have to thank him for that. And so he created the diva, and with the leaf, the branches, and you know, from there it's just wearing it with pride and in celebration of the Moringa movement, because it is a worldwide movement right now as I see it. I had no idea, say 4 years ago, it was going to halt. But I think in the age of COVID, it certainly did leap. And so yeah, I'm very happy about that. But so we're what I want to do with we're going to launch a new website by the end of March, moringatang.com, and I want people to subscribe to it and take a co-scription. And I'm not going to say that I know scientifically everything about Moringa, but based on my experience, this is what I found to be very beneficial to the body, right? So yeah, I'm really excited about moringatang.com, and we're going to have, of course, we're going to feature you on the website. We're going to feature Mariko and some others, Christian. I'll have links to. It's a place to learn about Moringa, but also to connect with other people around the globe that have a message, like Christian on sickle cell. I'm
Mhm.
really, really down with Christian on this, and I just thank him so much for being a leader that he is to combat sickle cell and things that he's discovering that's the alzheimer's is causing this sickling effect on the blood. I mean, it's just that world-class knowledge that only he can describe it the way he does that. So grateful for that. And
Yeah, I think there's kind of like this get in where you fit in idea, or I feel that, we're all not just, kind of amazed by this plan in terms of its health benefits, but then also connecting our careers and are all entrepreneurs within the Moringa world. I mean, if you look at yourself, Christian, myself, and Mariko, we're all engaged with Moringa that is connected to our careers, with me with grants, with you with Moringa Tank, with her training, offering not the product itself, but the knowledge of and developing out of, and then with Christian's, community and engagement that's focused. And that's what I think is interesting, is that there is an abundance with this plant. It's not like a competition. There are so many ways you could start making, like you said, cosmetic products or bath products, or even at the farmer's market, there's one woman in Sacramento who sells the trees as ornamentals. And then there's another woman who's selling it as fresh cut leaf vegetables. So again, they're at the same market. And now those are two totally different things. So I think that's what's just really impressive about how it's been integrated in this, like, also as a business as well.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, the agribusiness side of it is really, really terrific because of the diversity
yeah.
of products that are emerging into the marketplace. I think last I saw was about 50 products coming out of India. And so, yes, it's really fascinating. And I think it's the type of game changer that should occur. And if we could just keep the pharmaceutical companies out of our business right now, I think we're going to get to not only grow it, but also saturate the country, and everybody, every American or people around the world will be healthier for it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you one more question, and it's more for me. I mean, as I did say, you are kind of my mentor. I mean, what do you think I could do, or we could do better to accelerate that message or have more impact? Or like, should I be going to stores and saying, can you, like, what's your advice to all of us, trying to do this? Because there are such strong barriers from the industry, from natural human instinct to not necessarily want to eat the best always. So how do you think we can do better?
Well, social media is like the big catalyst nowadays. So I think more exposure on social media. Like I see all of these stories on TikTok, but I'm not a TikTok guy, but I do think it's fascinating, funny that how some people are presenting it, or rather, the facts are not there to support it, but they're having fun with it, and that's a good thing, right? Because
Yeah.
whether you're having fun with it or you're using it to cure something, I think anything that continued to accelerate the growth and the usage of it in this country in particular is a good thing. So social media, I mean, you're doing all of the visits to the farmers markets, and last year we did a little radio show. Podcasting is good. I've had some friends doing podcasting on cannabis, which is unique. They just have a specific audience, but I think that we can develop that type of audience in the state of California, and of course the universities could play a larger role. I mean, Fresno State has been a beacon of hope probably for the last 5 or 6 years, in working specifically with the Hmong community. But other institutions, particularly the ag schools, they need to step their game up around the country. And so, when I ventured into talking with Alcorn State, Tennessee State, and yeah, those Southern schools through Dr. Colley, the idea was to kind of expand the message a little bit. And what I found out in the last 6 months is that Alcorn State is doing research on moringa
Okay, great.
now. So that's a game changer, in particular the good part of it, but it's on carbon sequestration. Are they using it just for nutritional values, or growing it high density to improve the bottom line of farmers? So yeah, those type of things, social media, connecting with the ag schools,
Yeah.
and of course, publishing any credible information that's available for people to ponder and read up on themselves. I I had a friend to ask me about using moringa for her sister to cure cancer, and I said, I'm not the person to tell you exactly how it may benefit her. However, I think if you can consume it in a smoothie, it's often no more than 2 tablespoons a day, and give it 30, 60 days and see how she's feeling. And if her energy level is up and she's feeling a little bit better, a lot of it is psychological. So if you believe it, then you will.
Placebo effect, yeah.
Yeah.
Very powerful.
Mhm.
But I mean, and you can't deny the nutritional content. Like that was one thing, right? You can't deny that your body now has more calcium, potassium, iron, magnesium, amino acids for all cellular function to be happening, for all of your own body to also be in its best state, right? So that in itself that's why it's so hard when you separate nutrition and health, because they really are related, right? I mean, you can't like eat your way, you can't eat vegetables out of cancer probably, but they add, it is like a co-scription, and that's what we were talking about, is that it doesn't have to be all or nothing either, right? You can use chemotherapy and alter your diet and lifestyle and habits and these types of things. There is, again, like, see, my instinct is like, I just want to have a nice one pager for her to summarize the research that has been done that would be related. And so some of it is like, there's been a lot done with cancer in broccoli, but we know that broccoli's mechanism of action is the exact same as moringa's. The isothiocyanate is the same pharmacophore. So the way sulforaphane works is very much the same as the moringa isothiocyanate will work. So those mechanisms that are understood about cruciferous vegetables are relevant to cancer, And again, I have to walk this very fine line of how we say, although not on this podcast, I can say it, I can say whatever probably, but there is evidence to support these things. Yet at the same time, we're submitting grants to CDFA, and they're coming back saying they've basically never heard of this plant. A lot of people still haven't. So I think that's still some of the work, is just getting it out there. And I will reach out to this Wall Street Journal article that mentioned the climate change and trying to get reduced carbon output from the cows. They mentioned moringa, and one of the guys is at UC Davis. So I will reach out to him and see if we could try and put in a proposal. And that's, I think, another thing to note is that we are applying for grants, right? So those reviewers last year might not know what moringa is, but hopefully by next year they will, or they went home and asked about it. Or I met Chancellor May from UC Davis. He didn't know what moringa is and hopefully now does. So it's also, again, like we were talking about, your schools where you have hydroponics, or the gardens that act as tool sites or an example. I think moringa is also an example of a smart crop. So it's not just the plant itself, but can we be cultivating things that have more uses, that don't just produce one thing and then their waste stream is not addressed? So I think yeah, it is really exciting. And I appreciate your advice. See, your first advice was like, maybe do TikTok videos, that's so even though you're older and wiser, you also have this pulse on what's going on and open to, historical things that we did right and letting go of things that we didn't do right. And then also adapting to this very new modern world,
Yeah.
So
Well, the value proposition, I think, is the health department. Now, in Sacramento, for instance, they have what they call Champion for Change, and they're trying to deal with community health, right? It seems to me that the health department, since they use SNAP Ed dollars, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, they use these SNAP dollars to provide capital for people that want to start gardens in the community. This is the old-fashioned way to grow stuff. I don't use the soil, you know what I mean? But there is a way that we could, I think that there should be a relationship whereby the health department should be the #1 promoter of Moringa in the communities around the state of California because of the health issues that are so prevalent in those communities.
Yeah.
A lot of food deserts, right?
Yeah. And that's what they talk about, like nutrition sensitive agriculture, but maybe we almost would be switching that word from nutrition to like health sensitive agriculture. Like what are you growing that's going to help address these community issues? And do people in that community even want to eat this plant, right? Or do they know it by a different name? Or maybe we can just make a different recipe, or like some of that support, basically. I mean, if someone came over and cooked some new vegetable for me, I'd be excited. But if I walk into a grocery store and see all these foreign vegetables that I don't know, I'm not going to just pick one up and look it up, research it. I mean, if you walk into not Safeway, like there's a lot of Asian grocery stores here in Sacramento. I mean, it is the amount of different kinds of greens, in Kenya, that you can go to a Kenyan restaurant and there's 8 different kinds of greens you could order.
Yes.
But then in the city at the more modern restaurants, they just have collard greens. They don't have the amaranth and the sweet potato leaves and these types of things. So, well, I really want to thank you. It would be great if we can do this again. And thank you for everything. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
Yeah, by all means, moringatang.com will be coming at the end of next month. And I'll be having products like Moringa toothpaste.
Nice.
And of course, we have the seeds. And to be a subscriber, get a t-shirt. I'm going to package all of these things together for $50, including postage. And I'm hoping to help grow the Moringa message around the state of California in conjunction with all of the work that you're doing. So it's kind of like, I'm going to back it up on this end and encourage more people to grow and consume. And you're spreading the messages through the grant. And yeah, we'll do more conversations, whether it's podcasts or webinars, or just continue to explore ideas and create more magic around Alifera. Sadiba has arrived, and she's speaking very loud around the world right now. So I'm just very excited, not only for Moringa Tank world, but also for all of the work that you put in thus far and continue to do so. We'll shake Mr. Grant's hand on the next one when it comes in.
Yeah, definitely.
Keep playing.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Much appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carrie, and God bless. Have a great day.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.